you, Winfred, for hosting me and for such a nice presentation. It's a pleasure for me to talk to people from China. I really love that country. I've been there. I like it a lot. I like everything about China, so it's a pleasure for me to contribute to Chinese attendees and students and China in general. Thank you very much. So I'll start by telling you a little bit the background of the study. This is a study about introductions and conclusions of research articles. And as you already may know, the sections comprising research articles can be divided into moves according to this very well-known model by Swales. This is known as the Swales-Cars model. Cars means create a research space, and it's used to analyze introductions. According to Swales, there are three moves in introductions. Number one, establishing a territory. Number two, establishing a niche. And number three, occupying the niche. And you can also see other similar models according to those other authors. Well, those three moves in turn can be divided into steps. So for example, the first move, which is establishing a territory, includes three steps. Number one, claiming centrality. Number two, making topic generalizations. And number three, reviewing items of previous research. Not necessarily in that specific order, but it can vary from article to article. So for example, I'll show you here an article about arguing as an academic purpose, the role of asynchronous conferencing in supporting argumentative dialogue in school and university. So this is the paper, this is the abstract, and this is the introduction. So let's take a look at the introduction. It's just one paragraph, so I'm gonna read it in order to analyze it. It says, over the last decade, computer conferencing, sometimes referred to as discussion boards or web forums, has increasingly been used as a site in both schools and universities, as well as more broadly in the public domain for the exchange of views on academic ideas and issues. It has been claimed that conferencing, which is text-based and asynchronous rather than synchronous, is a particularly useful medium for developing students' argumentation skills. By creating a space for slow discussion, it is argued that students are able to reflect on and deepen their views on important issues, and that tutors can more easily and effectively monitor and intervene in the learning process. Claims about the benefits of this form of conferencing nevertheless remain contentious. This article contributes to the debate by using linguistic analysis to develop better understanding of how argumentation works in such an environment. So this is the introduction, one paragraph divided by sentences. So if you divide the sentences, you can see that every sentence has a function within the CARS model. So the first sentence is making the topic generalization. The second sentence is claiming centrality. And the third sentence is reviewing items of previous research. Together, those three steps make the establishing a territory move number one. The next sentence indicates a gap, and at the same time is establishing a niche. And the last one is announcing the present research. That's the objective of the contribution, and that's occupying the niche. So according to this analysis, what we are analyzing is the multivariate structure of the introduction. So moves and steps make up the multivariate structure of introductions. In other words, they form part-whole relations or constituency relations. But my interest is about the univariate structure, or also called iterative relations, or part-part relations of introductions. So those are the constituency relations. Those are the moves. Those are the steps. And those constituency relations are the same as when you analyze a clause in terms of the ideational functions, such as actor, process, and goal. Or if you analyze a nominal group according to constituency relations, you would find determiner, epithet, and thing. That's what I mean by constituency relations. However, my interest is in iterative relations, similar to the logical-semantic relationships between clauses, according to Halliday, where we have such types as enhancement, locution, extension, etc., in terms of hypotactic and paratactic relationships. So, for example, this is the analysis of one of the sentences. It has a lot of logical-semantic relations. It has hypotactic enhancement, hypotactic locution, paratactic extension, paratactic enhancement, and another paratactic enhancement. Now, I'm not analyzing clause relations. What I'm analyzing are sentences. So at the discourse level. So for example, this is an analysis of the rhetorical relations at the discourse level, and it's focusing on the relationships between sentences. So this is what I explain later. What is my purpose? Well, this study explores an aspect of the iterative structures of introductions and conclusions in research articles, the rhetorical relations according to rhetorical structure theory, a theory presented by Mann and Thompson. Now, I chose introductions and conclusions because they have been reported to be the most challenging for writers. So every time, especially students, when they have to, for example, PhD students or master's degree students, when they have to write an article, the most challenging parts are those two, the introduction and the conclusion, according to several studies. And for my study, I took different research articles from a number of applied linguistic journals in English. So the purpose is to find whether those sections or subgenres, as I call them, are characterized by the use of specific types of rhetorical relations. So I use, as I told you, rhetorical structure theory, but I also use systemic functional linguistics, especially to see if the most frequent relations in the two genres are of an ideational or interpersonal nature, and if that nature serves to locate the subgenres within a general theory of register. So what is rhetorical structure theory? Probably you have heard of it. It's the same as systemic functional linguistics. This is also a functional theory. Actually, Christian Matheson has participated in some projects regarding rhetorical structure theory. Well, this theory says that coherent texts consist of minimal units, which are linked to each other recursively through rhetorical relations. In other theories, rhetorical relations are also called coherence relations or discourse relations. It also says that coherent texts do not show gaps or non sequiturs. Therefore, there must be some relation holding among the different parts of the text. Which are our units in the text? They could be clauses, but as I told you already, my units are basically sentences or clause complexes. Now, Matheson and Thompson suggest that clause relations are the grammaticalization of rhetorical relations. And just as there are clause nexuses where one clause is the dominant, that's hypotaxis, and where both have the same status, that's parataxis, we also have rhetorical nexuses where one unit is dominant and where both share the same hierarchy. The former are referred to as mononuclear relations, and the other ones multinuclear relations. So in a mononuclear relationship, there is a nucleus and a satellite, and in a multinuclear relationship, there are two or more nuclei. So this is another example. This is a conclusion from a paper called Writing Differences in Teacher Performance Assessments, an investigation of African American language and edited American English. So I'm going to read it again in order to analyze it. It says, this study contributes further insight into research on African American language by focusing on written usage rather than spoken. It specifically examines the presence of AAL in the context of a formal professional development activity for teachers, a portfolio entry in MBPTS assessments. So as you can see, this second sentence is the elaboration of the first. Normally in an elaboration relationship, there is repetition of theme. The third sentence says, this research contributes to the continued debate over what factors lead to the significant differential performance seen between African American and European American candidates in all forms of assessment. The study lays the foundation for examining the relationship between AAL and differential performance outcomes. This is done by providing evidence for the existence of AAL in a context where it has the potential to affect assessors' judgments in the form of construct irrelevant variance in the portfolio scoring process. Furthermore, this study offers additional levels of complexity considered in research on AAL. Number one, the possibility of non-African American speakers writers using AAL forms in their language production, including in professional contexts requiring edited American English. And number two, the presence and possible effects of speech code errors, which occur in teachers writing regardless of race, ethnicity. So what they are doing here in this conclusion is making a list of all the important aspects that they found during the research. So if you compare here in the elaboration relationship, we have the nucleus, the main sentence, and the satellite. That's the second sentence that is like subordinated to the first. But in a list relationship, there is no subordination. It's just like conjunction. All the sentences are at the same level. So this is the list of rhetorical relations according to rhetorical structure theory. We have a lot of mononuclear relations and only 3 multinuclear relations. So we have here as mononuclear evidence, justify, antithesis, concession, circumstance, solutionhood, elaboration, background, enablement, motivation, volitional cause, non-volitional cause, volitional result, non-volitional result, purpose, condition, otherwise, interpretation, evaluation, restatement, and summary, and the multinuclear relations, sequence, contrast, and join. Now, the authors say that this is an open list. So for them, this list of relations is enough to analyze many types of text, but you might encounter some text where you need to add a relationship. So you can add new relations to the set. And actually, if you take a look at the website, this is a very interesting website where you can find many things about rhetorical structure theory, including the definitions of the relations and a lot of papers that have been published, and also software that you can use in order to analyze text. So this is the website, and here you can find another list that includes other relations, other rhetorical relations. So the theory also says that there is always a nuclear unit. Every time you analyze a text, there is a nuclear unit. And that's the topmost span that you find, where you can find the most important unit, the one that contains the nuclear unit. Thompson and Mann state that there is a strong tendency for the nuclear unit to represent the central purpose of the text. So if you take a look again at this diagram, if you compare the elaboration relation with the list relation is the topmost relationship, and that's like the nuclear unit. So when they say that there's a strong tendency for the nuclear unit to represent the central purpose, that means that the list relation contains the most important information, at least in this section. Now, what about the metafunctional nature of relations? Because as we said, you can divide all the relations in mononuclear and multinuclear, but we can also divide them according to metafunction. So we have a set of ideational relations. Those are content relations, where the author wants to expand on something. But we also have interpersonal relations. Those are intentional relations, where the author wants to create in readers a certain consideration towards something that he or she is saying. For example, credibility, desire, approval, or comprehension. So here in yellow, you have all the ideational relations. That's circumstance, solutionhood, elaboration, cause, result, purpose, condition, otherwise, interpretation, and evaluation. And interpersonal relations in green. That's evidence, justify, antithesis, concession, background, enablement, motivation, restatement, and summary. So all of those that are in green, what they do is this, to create in readers a certain consideration towards something. And the multinuclear relations are not of any metafunctional nature, but probably we could say that they are like textual relations. They serve a textual function. Now, this is the systemic functional linguistics model that, if you're familiarized with the theory, you may already know. So in the level of register, we have the three variables of context that are field, tenor, and mode. And within language, we have the three meta functions: ideational, interpersonal, and textual. So when we analyze context, we take into consideration the three variables of context. First, field of discourse. When we analyze field, we are concerned with socio-semiotic activity, for example, doing or meaning, and we are also dealing with domain of experience. So if we analyze the type of socio-semiotic activity, this is the proposal by Halliday and Matheson. Those are the main socio-semiotic activities that you can find in text. Then we have the tenor of discourse. When we analyze tenor, we analyze the roles that institutional roles that participants have, but also status and contact and values in terms of sociometric meanings that are interchanged. And finally, mode of discourse. This is the most complex characteristic of context, because we have a lot of things that are related to mode. First, division of labor, field division of labor between doing and meaning, but we also have semiotic division of labor between language and other semiotic systems. We also have term, whether we're dealing with monologue or dialogue, medium, if it's spoken or written, channel, if it's phonic or graphic, and rhetorical mode, if it's field-oriented or tenor-oriented. So field-oriented text are more like the informative type or didactic, explicatory, whereas the tenor-oriented is more like persuasive texts, hortatory, or polemic texts. So those are all the variables that we can study in terms of mode of discourse. As I said, this is very complex. We are dealing with a lot of things. We're going to focus mainly on rhetorical mode, whether the text is oriented towards field or tenor, depending on the nature of the rhetorical relations that we find. Now, according to Halliday and Matheson, orientation towards field is characteristic of expounding, reporting, and doing contexts, and also in principle of enabling context of the instructing subtype. In general, orientation towards tenor is characteristic of sharing, recommending, and exploring context, and also in principle of enabling context of the regulatory subtype. The orientation towards both field and tenor is reflected in the structure of traditional folk tales or nursery tales. Field is reflected in the sequence of events, initiating, sequent, and final, and tenor is reflected in the evaluations. So according to Halliday and Matheson, those would be the field-oriented sociosemiotic activities. We have expounding, reporting, doing, instructing, and the tenor-oriented contexts, such as exploring, recommending, sharing, regulating. Okay, so now I'll explain my methodology. Data collection, I collected 20 research articles, and I analyzed only the introductions and conclusions. Sorry, this is my mistake. It's just 20 introductions and 20 conclusions. Variables that motivated the selection of the articles, well, they had to be in electronic format so that I could analyze them with the software. They had to be in referee journals whose title contained the term applied linguistics. So all the journals, all the names of the journals had to contain this term, applied linguistics. They had to be published from 2000, from the year 2000 or later. They had to contain an opening introductory section, not necessarily titled introduction. Sometimes in papers, the introduction doesn't have the title introduction. But with the conclusion, they had to be called conclusion in order to discern its limit from the previous section. Yes, so in this case, it had to say conclusion. And finally, they had to be written by English native authors, for which purpose I use Wood's strict criterion, which dictates that authors have to have native names and work in an English-speaking institution. Then the data analysis, I analyze the rhetorical units. That's the connection between sentences. One interesting fact is that 50% of all the sentences are simple clauses. So this is a characteristic that they have, that almost all the sentences contain just one clause. The other 50% might contain 2 or 3 clauses, but normally the complexity is not very high. And for the analysis, I used RST tools, Rhetorical Structure Theory Tools by Mick O'Donnell, the same author that developed the WAM corpus tool that you might recognize already. So he also developed this other software to analyze the rhetorical structure. And after the analysis, I quantified the frequency of relations, general, the total number of relations, but also the topmost relations. And I also quantified the ideational and interpersonal relations. So let's see the results. This is the frequency chart of relations. As you can see, the most frequent relation in the introductions is the elaboration relations with 263 instances. But it's also the same type of relation. The most frequent one in conclusions, it's elaboration again with 171 instances. So why is the elaboration relationship the most frequent one? Well, other authors have stated already that this relationship, this elaboration relation, is very versatile because it supplements the nuclear portion with various kinds of detail, including relationships of set member, abstraction instance, whole part, process step, object attribute, and general specific. Actually, this relationship is very similar to the one described by Halliday in his logical semantic model, where they have elaboration, extension, and enhancement. This one is also very similar, but it functions at the level of discourse. In another rhetorical structure study, Fox found what she calls the issue schema, which is a nuclear unit plus an optional elaborating or background satellite, was the dominating structure in most of her written expository texts. So in her results, the elaborating relationship is also very frequent. And Halliday himself states that expository texts tend to contain a large number of elaborating relations, whereby speakers, or more often the writer, attempts to clarify some general proposition by repeating it in different words and giving examples. So every time you give an example, or you restate something, or you clarify something, you're using an elaboration relationship. So this is an example. This is the text that we already read. It says, this study contributes further insight into research on African American language by focusing on written usage rather than spoken. It refers to the same theme. That's this study. This study specifically examines the presence of AAL in the context of a formal professional development activity for teachers. So as I said previously, what we're observing here is that they're repeating the same theme rim structure. They are using the same theme in order to form an elaboration relation. Now let's take a look at the second most frequent relationship. In introductions, it's the background relationship with 52 instances, whereas in conclusion, we have the list relationship with 58. So as you can see, there's a big difference between number 1 elaboration and number 2 background in introductions, but also a big difference between elaboration in conclusions and list. So what is the background relationship? It's this one. This is the first introduction that I show you. It says, over the last decade, computer conferencing, sometimes referred to as discussion boards or web forums, has increasingly been used as a society in both schools and universities, as well as more broadly in the public domain for the exchange of views on academic ideas and issues. So this is the background information in order to understand the next sentence that says, it has been claimed that conferencing, which is text-based and asynchronous rather than synchronous, is a particularly useful medium for developing students' argumentation skills. In terms of the Swale's car model, this would be the making topic generalization step. So this is the same function, making a generalization or providing the background information for the next sentence. So this is the background relationship that is very frequent in introductions. And as we said, the other frequent relation in conclusions is the list, such as this one that we already discussed. Now, what about the topmost relations? So in this chart, we don't have the total number of relations, but only the ones that appear at the top of the diagram. So for example, here, the top relation is background, and here list. So in introductions, the most frequent topmost relationship is background with 29, and in conclusions is the motivation relation with 21. So we already discussed the background relation. As we said, it's in terms of Swales, it's making generalizations. And now let's take a look at the motivation relationship that appears a lot in conclusions. This is from an article called Author Identification in American Courts. So this is the conclusion. I'll read it for you in order to analyze it. It says, the American legal system's approach to expert evidence has been uneven and often inconsistent. Academic writers complain that it has led to an entrenchment of those areas of expertise that have been traditionally accepted, despite questions about their reliability. Nonetheless, we look at recent developments more as an opportunity than as reason for skepticism. In areas such as speaker identification, phoneticians and other scientists have been improving their methods to the point that they may soon be able to make the kinds of claims about voice identification that the legal system finds acceptable. The same is now beginning to happen in the field of forensic stylistics, which can only be for the good. And the last sentence says, we encourage the formation of interdisciplinary teams, including linguists, psychologists, mathematical modelers, and legal experts to accelerate its progress. So the final part is the one that motivates you to do something. So they have already done the research. They have already found the results. And after that, they motivate other authors to do something in the same vein, in the same topic, in the same field of research. So that is the motivation relation that we find here. And that's the one that is very frequent in conclusions. So the most important function in introductions is to give you the background information in order to understand the topic of study. And in conclusions, the most important one is to motivate authors to do something. Now, the metafunctional nature of relations. Let's go back to our list of total relations found in the texts. We already said that the elaboration relation is the most frequent, both in introductions and conclusions. But if you take a look at the other ones, let's just focus on the top 10 relations. Take a look from number 2 to number 10. In introductions, you see 3 relations that are interpersonal. That's the background, evidence, and concession. 4 that are ideational, condition, solution, interpretation, and result. And 2 that are multinuclear, or we can call them textual relations. Those are the list, and the sequence relations. Now, if you compare this with the conclusions, here we find that the interpersonal relations are doing a lot of work, yeah? We have the concession, motivation, evidence, justify, and antithesis, and only one ideational relation in the top 10, which is the result. Of course, that's regardless of the elaboration that we already said that it's very frequent. But besides elaboration, we have a lot of interpersonal relations. We have 3 textual relations. That's the list, conjunction, and sequence. And let's go back to our frequency chart of the topmost relations. And this is also very interesting because we have, again, a lot of interpersonal relations, the ones that are in green. In introductions, we have the background, justify, summary, and motivation, and only 2 ideational relations, that's solution and elaboration, and 1 textual, the sequence. And in conclusions, we don't find any ideational relations. We just have interpersonal ones and textual. So interpersonal, we have the motivation, justify, summary, and concession, and 1 textual relation, that's union. So that means that when we analyze if introductions and conclusions are field-oriented or tenor-oriented, well, introductions are kind of both, yeah? They have like a combination of ideational and interpersonal relations in the top 10. Here also a little bit of ideational. So introductions are like hybrid. Yeah, they are both field-oriented and tenor-oriented, but conclusions are more tenor-oriented. Yeah, if you take a look here, the top 10 relations, most of them are interpersonal, just 1 ideational. And here, we don't have ideational relations. So that means that conclusions are more tenor-oriented. So in introductions are, they can be informative, didactic, explicatory. They can also be persuasive, hortatory, or polemic, whereas conclusions are more like those. Conclusions are more persuasive, hortatory, and polemic. They are more tenor-oriented, according to the rhetorical relations that we find. Now, Hyland says that all academic texts are designed to persuade readers of something. For example, of the knowledge claim at the heart of a research article or dissertation. So according to Hyland, all the academic texts, all the papers, all the research articles have a persuasive characteristic that, yes, we find in introductions, but more in conclusions. So in introductions, although both introductions and conclusions show a clear orientation towards tenor, introductions rely more on subject matter rhetorical relations, ideational relations. Indeed, many authors did not include a separate literature review section in their article, so they have to describe and explain their object of study in the introduction. So if I don't have in my paper a literature review section, in the introduction, I have to explain my object of study. And that function is very oriented towards field. Yeah, I have to inform, I have to teach, I have to explain. So introductions are characterized for having both a persuasive and discursive style, but also an expounding and reporting one that we would expect of the methods and results. So that is to say, not only can the whole research article be regarded as a hybrid genre, but also its sections. And there are several studies that have focused on this hybrid characteristic of papers. So if you analyze a whole research article, you find some sections that are more tenor-oriented and others that are more field-oriented. But also, if you analyze one section, like the introduction, it can also have hybrid properties. It could have both field orientation and tenor orientation. So the orientation towards field of some sociosemiotic activities like expounding, reporting, and doing typically resonates with semantics through the use of ideational rhetorical relations. And in the same way, the orientation towards tenor of some other sociosemiotic activities like sharing, recommending, and exploring typically resonates with semantics through the use of interpersonal rhetorical relations. Now, this study was limited by the fact that the results might have pinpointed trends limited to the humanities or to the applied linguistics discipline. So more research about the rhetorical structure needs to be done in other disciplines. So I'm talking about, the characteristics of research articles within the field of applied linguistics. We don't know, or I don't know, if we analyze mathematics or biology or other fields of study, probably we will have different results regarding the use of rhetorical relationships. So that's all. Thank you very much.